So today I was looking at MU. As usual, I mark out the 4-hour range on the chart. That gives me some serious direction on the day. Then I drop down to the 5-minute chart. I'm looking for a break of the range, and right here I got one, right at market open. It broke above the range with some serious momentum as well, so I was curious. Then as you can see, the price reversed and came back inside the range. This, as we know, is a short signal. As you can see, the MACD was negative and price was below VWAP. This is a good sign that the price is going to continue downward, so I was considering taking a short. The selling pressure and the volume also looked really good in this area. My entry came here on the close of the candle that re-entered the range, but as we can see, price dipped a tiny bit and blew straight through my stop loss. I don't usually trade stocks often, but when I do, my size is a lot smaller than it usually is, so this was about a $600 loss. Okay, so now we're looking at INTC. My 4-hour range is already marked. Then I dropped down to the 5-minute chart. Right here, price broke below the range low. Instead of chasing it, I waited for the confirmation. Now, this is interesting because the price came back into the range, but it was still below VWAP, even though my MACD was positive. So what I did was I waited for price to move above the VWAP. I knew it would happen because there was a lot of upward momentum. Since the breakout was pretty small, my stop loss was also really tight. My stop always goes at the high or the low of the breakout. So my risk on a trade is well defined from the start. And my take profit is always 2 times my stop loss. So that's 2R. Price was definitely choppy after I got in, but the overall structure stayed intact. I stuck to the plan, let the trade play out, and eventually price pushed into my take profit level. This trade ended up being a $2,400 gain, so that was a nice trade. The Achilles heel of a scalping strategy is that the average winners are really small. Now, a lot of beginners are drawn to scalping strategies because of the instant resolution. You don't have to deal with the exposure risk of holding a position, waiting to see whether it will resolve or not in your favor. But the problem is that a lot of beginner traders, they don't have the experience that gives them the educated tuition, which results in having a 70% accuracy. So with lower accuracy, they're incurring more losses. And if you're not good at cutting your losses quickly, you're going to have a negative profit to loss ratio, which means you're basically destined to lose money. So the real question here is, how do we increase that educated intuition so beginner traders can trade with a higher degree of accuracy? And I'm telling you, it boils down to stock selection, trading the strongest stocks each day if stocks are what you primarily trade. I trade them from time to time, and this is a big part of increasing my accuracy. Sometimes people who are adopting a scalping strategy think that they should trade all day long. They take 100 trades in a day, just scalp, 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 scalp. Okay, that is one way to do it, and there certainly are some traders who do that, but I am a big advocate of taking quality trades over the quantity of trades. So focusing on the best quality setups, and that means you're looking for a setup that gives you a 2-to-1 profit to loss ratio, or 2R. So you're looking at the trade and you're saying, on this setup, I'm going to risk $100 to potentially make $200. You take the trade, and even if you take your profit really quickly as a scalp trade and you only make $100, that's okay. The setup had potential for more. The problem is that a lot of scalp traders, they end up lowering their quality standards in order just to take more trades every day, and they're taking trades that are at best a 1-to-1 ratio, and when they only get $50 instead of the $100, when they end up incurring losses, which of course will happen, they find themselves with a negative profit to loss ratio. And this can be extremely frustrating because a scalper might take 20 trades and have only 3 losses, but those 3 losses are so big, it wiped out the profit from the other 17, or most of the profit. When this happens, you feel defeated. You feel absolutely demoralized. Many of you are familiar with that feeling. I'm also familiar because I was once there as well. When I first adopted a scalping strategy, when I was getting started, I had a negative profit to loss ratio of 2-to-1. My average losers were twice the size of my average winners. And what that meant was I needed to be right 66%, at least 66% of the time just to break even. Well, it's safe to say I was not trading at 66% because I was still learning the strategy. That's way too high of a bar for a beginner at least. So what I was essentially doing was setting myself up for failure without even realizing it. Scalping is difficult, but trading is also difficult. And there are a lot of things that make a scalping strategy a great strategy for beginners. Instant resolution, reduced exposure time, and just the simple fact that it's easier to predict what a stock is going to do within the next 5 to 20 minutes than it is to predict what what it will do 2-3 hours later or even days later. So in order to improve your accuracy, what I always encourage traders to do is to focus on quality setups. Look for high quality setups, and yes, you will be leaving some money on the table by scalping that setup instead of holding for it to potentially realize, the entire move. But you know as well as I do that if you don't take your profit off the table, it can disappear. And that's why so many scalp traders adopt that strategy, because they've had enough times where they took a trade and they were up big. They didn't take anything off the table and boom, it not only goes back to break even, it ends up turning into a loser. That is the absolute worst. Now, I certainly understand that there are traders out there that are going for home runs. And when you're going for home runs, you let it ride. But those traders have much lower accuracy. Of course, that's offset by the higher profit to loss ratio. But I personally am too emotional. Yes, I'd admit I struggle emotionally when I have low accuracy. When I have low accuracy, my confidence takes a huge hit. I don't feel confident to set up or to step up to the table with big share size. And so a low accuracy strategy for me, even if it has a high profit to loss ratio, it still doesn't work. I just can't get my head around it. It doesn't work for me. I need a high accuracy strategy. That's what gives me the confidence to step up to the plate for every trade, even if my profit to loss ratio isn't really excellent. And that's more on the scalping side of things. So focusing on quality is number one. When you focus on quality, what that in turn does is improves your accuracy. When your accuracy improves, you're not having as many losers in total. And most likely you're eliminating some of those losers that become the outliers that were really big. So now what happens is accuracy improves, profit loss ratio follows, and then consistency follows. And you know what that breeds? Confidence. It becomes a positive feedback loop. And that's exactly what you need as a beginner trader. You need that momentum. You need that loop of accuracy and consistency and a decent profit to loss ratio to build that momentum to become profitable over the long term. So again, I implore you to focus on quality over quantity. That is number one. Try also to build up your educated intuition of what a good quality setup even looks like. Sit down every morning, whatever time you trade stocks, and watch those scanners. Look at the top gappers, look at the top gainers. By the way, if you're looking for a quality platform to trade on, I recommend Exness. You can start trading with as little as $10 and testing these strategies and learning and building your consistency. So it will be the first link at the top of the description. Using that link, you can get access to a $10 account and really start putting these things into practice. So the fact that you've got a negative profit to loss ratio, you've got to be aware of it, and you've got to do everything you can to combat that inherent characteristic of scalping.